Evening, traveler. Pull up a chair by the stove and warm your hands. The wind's got a sharp bite to it tonight, blowing right down off the high ridge. It's quiet out there now, but quiet nights have a funny way of making folks think back on things that don't quite add up. My name is Sheriff Silas. For better or worse, I've spent more years than I care to count keeping the peace right here in this corner of the 1880s frontier. And if there's one thing I've learned patrolling these dusty streets, it's this: trouble rarely knocks on your door wearing a sign that says it's dishonest. Most times, it slips in quietly through the back window, wearing a polite smile and carrying a neatly sharpened pencil. Take what happened over at the Oakhaven Mercantile just last Tuesday. Now, old Arthur Pendleton has run that general store for 20 years. Honest as the day is long, fair in his dealings, and wouldn't cheat a nickel off a blind man. But when Arthur walked into my office 3 mornings ago, his hands were shaking so bad he could barely hold his coffee cup. He didn't come in hollering about outlaws or gunfighters. No, sir. Arthur looked me dead in the eye and said, "Sheriff Silas, someone's been stealing right out from under my nose, and according to the books, it's a ghost." Well, I don't rightly believe in ghosts. But I do believe in arithmetic. And arithmetic, when it's handled honestly, never lies. Let me tell you how we untangled that knot. When I stepped over to Arthur's store, the morning sun was just cutting sharp angles across the wooden boardwalk. Inside, the place smelled sweet, like burlap sacks of oats, fresh pine soap, and a hint of peppermint from the jar by the counter. Arthur led me back to his small office behind the counter. He laid out his grand ledger on the desk, a thick book bound in calfskin, filled with columns of neat ink entries going back 12 years. Every shipment of flour, every bolt of calico cloth, every box of percussion caps was recorded right there. "Look here, Silas," Arthur whispered, pointing a trembling finger down at the bottom of the page. "Last month, my inventory sheet says I received 50 crates of iron horseshoes from the foundry down in Denver. Cost me $400 even. But when I count the crates stacked out in the storage shed, there's only 40. 10 crates vanished into thin air. And worse, look at the bottom line." I leaned in closer, tracing the ink with my thumb. The subtraction was clean, but the totals didn't match the physical stock. "It gets stranger," Arthur continued, his voice tight. "The lock on the back door hasn't been picked. The key stays right here in my vest pocket, even when I sleep. And nobody else has access to this office except for one person, young Thomas Miller." That afternoon, I went back to the Oakhaven Mercantile while the sun was hanging low and orange over the western hills. I asked Arthur to let me inspect the storage shed behind the main building out back. The shed was a sturdy wooden structure with a heavy sliding door and a padlock on the outside. Arthur unlocked it, and we stepped inside into the cool, dim interior. "Count 'em with me, Arthur," I said. We stacked and counted every single crate of iron goods, nails, and tools. Sure enough, exactly 40 crates of horseshoes were accounted for. 10 short. Then, I stopped looking at the inventory and started looking at the room itself. I looked at the floorboards. I looked at the rafters overhead. And finally, I looked at the exterior wall that backed up against the narrow alleyway behind the property. Right there, near the bottom corner of the wooden wall, the cedar planks showed something interesting. There were faint, fresh scrape marks on the lower panel, scrapes made by something heavy being dragged across the floor on a regular basis. Furthermore, one of the interior support beams had a wooden peg that could be slid out from the inside. I walked outside, squeezed into the narrow alleyway behind the shed, and examined the exterior wall. Sure enough, right opposite that interior wall, 2 of the exterior siding boards weren't nailed down permanently. They were held in place by clever wooden latches hidden behind a stack of empty packing pallets. You see, nobody was picking the lock on the front door. Nobody was breaking into the office ledger at night. The thief had figured out a much simpler, quieter method. During the busy midday hours when the store was packed with customers and young Thomas was busy inside, someone would slip down the alleyway, slide open the hidden wall panel from the outside, and pull out 1 crate of horseshoes at a time, just enough to carry off without anyone noticing a massive bulk missing all at once. We didn't need a shootout. We didn't need a dramatic chase across the prairie. When I confronted Mr. Higgins down at the livery stable the next morning with the loose wall panel and the shipping logs in hand, the old man didn't even try to reach for iron. He just looked down at his boots, sighed a heavy sigh, and admitted what he'd done. He'd been skimming a few items off every delivery run for months, fencing them down in the next county over. We recovered half of the stolen goods, and Higgins made full financial restitution to Arthur Pendleton before packing up his wagon and leaving town for good. Arthur got his books balanced, young Thomas kept his good name cleared fair and square, and peace returned to the Oakhaven Mercantile. You see, folks often think detective work is all about fast horses and loud guns. But more often than not, it's just about patience. It's about listening closely, checking your numbers, refusing to jump to hasty conclusions, and letting the truth reveal itself in its own good time. Thank you kindly for dropping by and sharing this quiet moment with me tonight. The fire's dying down, and the stars are out in full force over the ridge. Until next time, keep your ledger clean, your heart steady, and your dealings honest. Good night, partner.